What's exciting right now about yoga, an aspect of it?
Well, so I don't know how to summarize this in like one or two words, right?
Okay.
Okay. But what's exciting for me? Okay, well, hold on. I have to backtrack a little bit.
Phil Phails for you.
So, there's been multiple times in my life where I thought, because I've been doing yoga for 20 something years, right?
Uh-huh.
I thought, wow, I'm a really like grounded, centered human that is able to navigate my emotions from this grounded place, that is able to respond from a regulated place, that has a spiritual connection to whatever, universe, world, whatever name you want to give it, right?
Source, yeah.
And then source, that's a good word for it. And then there's a new phase of life that happens, like having kids. And then I was like, wow, I'm the most ungrounded, unregulated human on this planet, and I need lots of work, right? And then I kind of, not that I ever got good at parenting, because I most definitely, it's a challenge every day, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I found my footing, okay, and utilized lots of tools that, of course, I had from yoga, but of course, also going back to therapy,
Mm-hmm.
right? So then, fast forward to more recently, I start my second internship, and I'm working at a shelter for asylum seekers and immigrants. And my world expands tremendously because now I'm very aware of what's happening in Africa and what's happening in, well, all over the world,
Wow.
right? And I'm hearing lots of stories that are like hard to listen to, much less process,
Right.
right? So then I find myself once again in this place of, what is my yoga doing? I'm feeling sad. I found myself angry a lot of the time and unleashing on the poor like checkout person or whoever,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so then it was another phase of life where I'm like, okay, I have to level up, right? And so really the yoga practice became a tool where it made me realize that there's these different phases in our life where we expand our capacity for something,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like parenting, you're expanding your capacity to hold space for a lot of emotions, a lot of
Window
different.
of tolerance.
Right. Yeah.
What Dan Siegel called the window of tolerance, right? The green zone.
Mhm.
Right? That's your resilience.
Yes. Yeah.
I interrupted you.
No. That's yeah, that's perfect. And so then with the internship, it was expanding my capacity to hold more suffering like the world and being aware of everything that's happening, and hearing stories, right? And so with that expansion, there has to be expansion in another direction, right? If
Yeah.
you're going to open up to more like suffering and challenge,
Self-care. You need to have self-compassion, self-compare. Some balance is what
right.
you're speaking to.
Right. And in the beginning, I didn't have the tools for that.
The
Right.
balance.
Right. It was just, I was making all this space for suffering, and I didn't have the space for anything else. And so that's what was happening. There was a tremendous level of sadness, which you can't move through your day feeling sad, right? It's hard to function when you're like really sad.
Yeah.
So I think some of us, and this is myself, we use anger to kind of, anger can be motivating,
Yeah.
right?
Anger sits right on top of fear and sadness most often as a secondary emotion.
Right. And so that I found myself, it's not like I was out there being violent or whatever,
Here comes Mary.
Right. But it's like, I don't know.
You were just spinning off a little negativity here and there.
Yeah. And sometimes
It's a vibe.
It's a vibe. Yeah. And I'd walk away being like, I don't feel good about the way I handled that.
Yeah.
So I think the yoga comes in where I realized I needed to be present and sit with the sadness more so that I could acknowledge it instead of going to that secondary emotion of anger,
Right.
right? But then I also there's this idea of like detachment in yoga, right? Where I think you said it in one of your podcasts, like you disconnect from the I, right?
Non-attachment to, yeah.
And so then with that, it's like, okay, well, I can experience the sadness, but I don't have to be this
Yeah.
sadness.
It's present.
Right. And then the next step is then to make space for something that is like more joyful or more, I don't know what the word would be, but to find that balance,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think then that's where the other pieces of yoga come in, right? So we have the awareness that's like, woof, I'm feeling sad.
Right.
Right. And then we have presence sitting with it. And then we have these other tools that help to regulate the nervous system so that we can make space for something else.
Heck yeah.
Right. And so those tools were like the breathing techniques, movement, of course, affirmations, meditation, mantra. So those tools then help me to be a little bit more grounded, which then I think allows us to have that space to where we're not consumed by the sadness, right?
Yeah.
If you're more grounded, more centered, or whatever word you want to give it, you can kind of witness a bit more.
Yes.
And then through that, that's what makes space, I think, for something else, like a moment of joy to kind of balance it out. Right.
That.
So that's what I'm excited about is continuously kind of expanding my capacity
On both sides.
on both sides. Yeah. So that I can do work that I'm passionate about, like working with asylum seekers
Yeah.
or working with people just in a general yoga class that are going through whatever it is they're going through, right?
And still maintaining your own emotional regulation, still maintaining your own, neutral, if not positive outlook and vibe.
Mhm.
Having your spirit be able to contain all of that, to
Mhm.
hold space for all of that, and not be, negatively impacted.
Mhm.
Because taking that positivity to this other space where there's a lot of sadness, there's a lot of probably despair,
Mhm.
and meeting that with compassion, empathy, loving kindness has a tremendous value. But
Mhm.
going the other direction of like taking all that despair and sadness and then bringing it to the other side, it could go either way. And it seems like you're really wanting it to go this positive way.
Mhm.
What you
Mhm.
shared reminds me of rain. It's I don't know if it's insight meditation or it's an acronym
Oh,
for
okay.
managing difficult emotions.
Mhm.
R stands for recognize, which is
Mhm.
what you just said. You recognize sadness is here,
Mhm.
fear is here, anger is here. It's
Mhm.
present. It's part of this. And then the A stands for acceptance. Like you accept
Mhm.
the present moment as it is,
Mhm.
you know. And then the third is like investigate. You What's the quality of this emotion? Where is it? Am I restless? Am I breathing shallow?
Mhm.
Is there like, am I balled up in my stomach? You take your
Mhm.
intuition from your body. Like, what is my
Mhm.
body? How does it respond to this emotion?
Mhm.
And then the N is nurture,
Mm.
the self care, the
Mhm.
breathing, all the things, the yoga,
Mhm.
the movement, the things that support you in moving through that
Mhm.
difficult emotion.
Yeah, and I think what you just said, the I for investigate, the things that you spoke to are somatic, right? The
Uh-huh.
tightness in the stomach or the shallow breath. And I think a lot of times we may not be aware of that because we're kind of like so outside of our bodies trying to take in all the
Or right up in
things.
here,
Yeah, or
trying to think our way out of it.
right. And so I think that's the direct like connection to yoga as far as the asana, like the physical
Right.
aspects, right? Because it brings you back into your body. So you are intentionally kind of witnessing what is happening.
Yeah. So Phil Phails at let's try to sum that up in a little bow.
Yeah.
Phil Phails at increased capacity
Oh.
Phil Phails
Mhm.
at resilience. I'm gonna spitball. You can throw some words out
Okay.
too. They don't have to be small. It could be a couple
Yeah, I
words
mean, I
here.
like resilience, but I also it's like one of those what is it called? One of those words.
Overused
Well, it's over and I'm guilty of that, like,
Yeah.
because I can't find the right words. I'm like,
Yeah.
resilience,
Or
resiliency,
like
right?
boundary. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, that is a good word, but keep going. Do you have another one?
You have to spit out some too. We're improv this. We're spitballing. Give me a couple.
Let's okay. I liked the increased capacity. What else? Um, yeah, I'm not the type of person that can come up with words. I'm not
You're
I don't
not?
no, I'm so bad at this game.
Neutralizing suffering. Phil fails at neutralizing suffering. Phil fails at mindful suffering. Phil fails at suffering.
That's
Um, as
uh,
Phil fails at what you're doing is balance.
I think that's good.
Phil fails
Balance.
at balance,
Sure.
which also for yoga is one of the. If I think of yoga, I think of strength, balance, breath,
Mhm.
mindfulness.
Mhm.
And I'm someone who hasn't, so you're going to tell me what yoga is, but those, when I think of it as a layman,
Yeah.
as someone on the journey to understanding more about yoga, that's what comes to mind for me.
Mhm.
So balance would make sense.
Yeah.
And in this context, we're balancing out the different energies that we experience throughout our day,
Mhm.
balancing out I don't want to call it negative, but some of the more,
Challenging.
yeah,
Mhm.
emotions with, whether it's a gratitude practice or whatever it is, to balance that out and say, like, I'm okay. This world it contains everything,
Mhm.
and I've got to equalize.
Mhm. Yeah. I like balance.
Let's do it.
That works. Good job.
Good job. We did it.